The prerequisite on your dream is not what you may think it is. It is what it is. And you have to do the work. You have to put the time in. You have to go through every door and maximize every potential. And if you do that and you work that hard, then you will get your dream. But we don't get to dictate, the hours of the dream. And that's something I think that's hard for people to grapple with.
This episode is sponsored by Plight and Craftsman Films. All right, today's guest is writer, director, and producer MJ Alhabeeb Jr., the filmmaker behind the award-winning indie feature Plight, which has been making waves on the festival circuit, picking up Best Director at both the Orlando and Borrego Springs film festivals, and earning top prizes at Wild Rivers, Bloomington, and Pittsburgh. Plight has been praised as a moving and thought-provoking thriller, and it's set for theatrical and digital release this summer through Indie Rights. MJ started his career in public access television at just 16 and has since gone on to produce features like Crown Vic and Bayou Caviar and co-create the award-winning series Broke Boys. He's also the founder of Impavid Entertainment, and today he's here to talk about the journey of Plight, making bold indie films and building a career outside the system. MJ, welcome to Off the Lot.
Awesome. Thank you. Thank you for having me, Ken, and looking forward to chatting.
Yeah, this is super exciting. Well, you have a lot going on. I mean, just to give some context right now to anybody listening, what are you doing right now? Where are you? What's happening in your life?
Absolutely. So we are actually in the midst of our theatrical run for Plight. We opened in Kansas last night, so we were out there. It was a terrific crowd, very engaged. We actually opened in St. Francis. It's a little town in northwestern Kansas, where we shot the majority of the film pre-vaccine during COVID. And so the community was so supportive. They came out in droves to help us. And so, we wanted to bring the film back. And so mapping out theatrical, that was actually one of the locations that we had a contingent, and working with our distributor and timing and working with the venues. And it worked out that we were able to play there. So now I'm back in Denver. We open in Boulder this weekend. Yeah, we're just in the midst of that theatrical tour right now.
That's really cool. And I love the idea of, you had your premiere in the town that you shot it at.
So we actually had our premiere on June 13th in Beverly Hills, and we had a 1-week opening run. Yeah. And so what we've been doing essentially is having a theatrical tour to support the theatrical run. So every place we go, we are treating it as a red carpet premiere, with a step and repeat, photos, press, engaging with the community. And, a lot of our cast and crew are going to be at each one. And so the film will play in the theaters, but that opening night we'll be doing premiere festivities for each.
I love that you're totally eventizing each screening, and I think that's such a wonderful way to go about this. And I want to actually dive into that in much more detail in a second, but I'd love to just go all the way back and tell people, like, what is Plight? How did this movie come about, and more specifically, how did you even get started in film that led you to this, to this moment? I love these stories.
Yeah, it's a lot to cover. So I'll start with Plight. Plight came about really just wanting to tell stories. It's a fictitious narrative, but stories about, textured real people, people that, we see every day, many of us, and like thrust into adverse situations. How will we react? Viewing our own moral compass as we view these characters and on their journey, centering in on, building the characters for Plight. I did that first, and then I kind of mapped out the plot. I felt like if I know these characters, down to the T, basically understanding, every little thing that happened in their lives, I'm better informed in writing the script and, how they'd react in a certain situation when you're actually fleshing out the story. And so, I wrote that. And, we were actually producing another film at the time and a TV series. And we had a finished film that was ready to premiere on March 13th, 2020, out in Los Angeles. So, we all headed out there. And, if you remember, it's the day before the NBA cancels their season, the NHL canceled their season. And then, our premiere kind of went on at this festival. And we were a few weeks out from rolling into pre-production on Plight. And so we had to kind of hit pause, put our ears to the ground, really do our due diligence in making sure that we had a safe approach to production, following the testing. Everyone was kind of navigating the virus. We were able to assemble an amazing team that just dedicated cast and crew that wanted to make a film. We quarantined in place in that small town in St. Francis, Kansas, tested everybody, and then nobody was allowed to leave. So we're all, shooting in certain zones, but also staying in some of the houses and the locations and separating each department so that, there's not a chance of, not a strong chance of getting the virus at that point. And luckily we were able to do that and, get through production.
That's such an interesting, journey that you had to go on. And so many filmmakers at that time, like I've run into so many that were like, yeah, we started shooting middle of March, or we were slated to shoot and we had to shut down and push. And look, like it affected the entire world and film industries everywhere. And so, yeah, it's just so interesting to hear how people navigated that, especially when you don't have a big studio behind you where you can just sort of close the doors, lock up, keep renting the soundstage for a little while. And it's insurance and all of these things. But, as an indie, you don't have those kinds of resources. So you really had to figure out a way to make this happen. But, kudos to you and your team for figuring out a way to still shoot the movie and not just let it die. I'd also love to learn more about what is Plight about? What's the story? What's, the log line? What can you tell us about the story?
Well, it starts off with this tragic accident, and it follows this couple that, there's a hit and run accident, and one of them perishes, and his father is seeking justice and looking for answers, pushing authorities to get to the bottom of it. He loses his son, and his son's fiance is in a hospital, and she's fighting for her life. And her sister actually comes over from Ukraine. They grew up in Ukraine and comes over to work every job she can to try to pay for medical and to keep her sister alive. And, the two of them, the sister Valentina and the father Joe, they kind of come from two very different backgrounds, but they have a lot of the same sort of core family values. And they come together to really, get to the bottom of what happened and
so to peel back the layers and take justice into their own hands in a way.
Yeah. It's always interesting. Whenever I describe the story, it's like I'm the type of person where I watch trailers. I don't want to know anything, but I know I have to, so I'm careful to navigate on what happens. But really, it's about, like you said, taking justice into their hands, but really seeking ways to honor their family, to protect their family. At the end of the day, that's one of the biggest themes of the film is family and, how important it is. And really looking at the dichotomy of if your family is in an adverse situation or predicament that, you really need to act to do something to protect them or honor them or keep them alive, what would you do? And asking those questions, on the surface level, many people may feel like they know how they'd react, but when you're actually thrust in the middle of that situation, it becomes a little bit more in the gray. And I feel like we all live in the gray. And so I like to create the characters that live in the gray. Nothing really in life is black and white. And so, trying to paint them with accurate brushstrokes, if we say.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And it's, how far will you go to protect the ones you love, do the right thing to make things right? Those stories just resonate with audiences all over the world. And so it's no wonder that you've had a very successful festival run, got a distributor, and are now, making waves in theatrical as well. It's great to see. Talking about development of this film, what was the inspiration for it? Is this something, this is a thriller, right? A dramatic thriller. Are these the types of movies you grew up watching? Did you always want to direct and write something like this?
Yeah, that's a great question. So I grew up watching films with my parents, at a young age, and really just enjoying the experience of transforming to different worlds and, feeling like I'm in the shoes of the characters and their predicaments and what they're facing. But I always felt like, even with films I really enjoyed, I wish they did that. I wish this character did this, or I wish, the film did X, Y, Z. And I didn't really know that I was kind of directing in my mind and I had a vision for maybe how a story would transpire or a character would react. And so the impetus for becoming a filmmaker really was just, hey, I want to tell my own story. I was 14 years old and I grabbed some friends together. I had this little notebook I wrote down different stories, and we had a bike and we had these really cool hills. And, the first day was a disaster. Two of my friends didn't show up. The friend with the camera, he got grounded the night before and I didn't know. This was like cell phones were just being introduced. And so, to date myself, but it's like that was the first experience. And then everything from then, I was able to build. I made the first feature film at 15.
Really? Wow.
Yeah, yeah. So public access that had one little iMac, learning on the iMac, and then like an AB studio, and kind of learning cuts editing and learning like how everything from a film is put together, and then taking the camera out, grabbing friends, shooting after school, shooting on the weekends. And then we got into some film festivals, and we had a local Cinemark, and I thought, let's do a red carpet premiere. And so I've been doing this for a while. You talk to their corporate office was in Plano, Texas, and I'm talking to them, and I'm 15, and they were like, well, wait a minute, we need to talk to your parents. But we were able to find a way to rent the theater.
Who is this kid all of a sudden? Yeah, talking to the cinema. That's amazing, and it's so great that you're just like, well, why not just pick up the phone and call them? Like, why not just take matters into my own hands? I want to make a movie. I want people to see my movie. I love it. That's fantastic. That's what you have to do.
You have to, and that's the thing. So I had guidance counselors. I grew up in Western Massachusetts. Not a huge hotbed for film, but they would always say, well, go to business school, and then you can go to art school, or go to art school, and then you can go to film school. And I had one teacher who was great. He was, he actually had this alternative learning program that he created for me while I was working on the film. So I was able to get elective credits, and he was the head of the technology department. And he just encouraged me. He said, you're already doing it right now, so continue doing it. And that was kind of my mindset. My parents instilled in me as well. Like, at a very young age, you can do and you can be whoever you want to be. And obviously, to a kid, to me, you don't think of geopolitics. You don't think of like things in the world. You're like, great, well, this is what I want to do. I want to do this. And for the longest time, I was going to be in the NBA. And that was my goal. And then I fell in love with film, and I said, well, I can love basketball from afar. I'm going to be a filmmaker. And so it was the best film school. I said all that to say it was the best film school for me, trying to make films, because every time you get better, you learn things, you troubleshoot different ways. And so I always encourage people that, sometimes people ask me, like, well, how did you do this? Did you take this step, that step? And like, really, I say there's so many different paths you can take. Some are going to be great. Some that might not be great. Actually inform you on what's not great so that you can get on the right path. But ultimately, no matter what the case is, keep making films. If you're a filmmaker, you make films. If you're a producer, you produce. If you're a director, you have to direct, and so on and so forth.
Well, there's so much to unpack there, and I can totally relate, because when I was a teenager as well, making movies with my friends, and we were getting into smaller festivals with our student films. So many family members that would say, well, go to business school. You're good with computers. Why don't you get into like computer science and then do this as a hobby? It's like, no, I've wanted to be a director since I was 5 years old. I'm going to film school, or I'm going to be making movies, and I'm going to figure this out. There is no backup plan. Where our paths diverge a little bit is that I went to Vancouver Film School, which is a 1-year program. And I specifically chose that film school because it was only 1 year, where I'm like, I don't want to go to UBC or Capilano for a 4-year, degree in film, because it's really not going to help me. Getting into the industry, making things, getting your hands dirty, and networking and meeting people, that's what it's about. And so I totally agree with you. Going out and just making the movie is the path to making movies. And it's so great to hear that it was a guidance counselor that you were saying, right? That encouraged you to.
The guidance counselor was against it. Some of my teachers were against it. It was my, he kind of wore many hats. He was our technology, head of the technology department. That's how it was back then. They just like a blanket word, technology, but he was running, he was like my wood shop teacher. He was, there was an editing program, but not exact. It was kind of a communications class, but yeah, he was the one who encouraged. And actually, funny enough, our paths actually don't diverge that much, because what I ended up doing, I moved out to LA with that goal. I don't want to do 4 years. I don't want to sit 2 years of gen eds, and I know what I want. I was about to go to LA Film School and get the loan and do all that. And I had a friend of a friend who worked at TNT. He brought me into this office. It's like in Burbank. He had this huge bow window and like 3 sides. And he's like, I look out and I see what freeway, I take it, going home. Like that was his flex of like, I'm like, yeah, this office is great. And he told me, he said, forget all that with the school. He's like, go to UCLA Extension. You get instructors who work in the industry. You could build your own like curriculum, or you can take their programs. And I looked at it and it was great. You had some household, below the line names that I knew. And then, I'm in class and there were some A-listers in my classes. I had a class with Bryce Dallas Howard, and we're sitting there in class learning something. Rick Fox was in there learning something with me. And like, it was incredible because I did do that. I built my own curriculum, really went to school to study what I could apply to film and to my career, not just to try to pass the class or get an A. That wasn't my concern. It was, how do I advance my skill set in this film industry?
Oh yeah, that's such a good point. And I think, we do have this debate often about film school or no film school. And there are so many benefits to it, but not in terms of what people expect the benefits would be, in terms of, no, you're not going to just get a job because you went to film school. Film school is about networking. It's about learning the technical side of things, because they have equipment that you can play with and you can learn more about. Film school benefited me in a way where on one of my first jobs, I was able to talk to the director of photography about the ASA of a certain film stock, because I just learned about that, and so there's a technical training that's good, the networking and the other benefits that are there. But I love how you utilized it and built your own curriculum and your own career out of that. I think that's super smart.
Yeah. Thank you.
Yeah. So then what happened? So how long was that program?
It's interesting because I built my own program out of it, and it was supposed to be, I think, 2 years for a certificate. And I ended up doing about 2.5, but like half time for the last year and a half, just like dabbling in different disciplines and taking different courses. I had made at that point 3 small feature films as a kid, no budget, not micro, but like no budget. Those were the films that we played at the local multiplex there. But I knew, I was like, it's got to be about more than this. Now, I can't just make a film. Like when I was 15 or 16, it was impressive. And, I got into some film festivals and people were like, oh, like this whiz kid, he's doing something. But at this point I was 21 and the quality needed to be better. It wasn't just impressive that you make a film. And I needed to really understand all the visual elements. And that was what I really focused on as a storyteller, as a director. You have so many different ways to communicate. It's not just actor A speaks to actor B, and then you understand that what C is. No, we can communicate with color. We communicate with the motion of the camera. We communicate with music. And so I really tried to hone my craft to get into that. And I didn't want to just do another no budget film, because I felt like I can make $1 stretch, maybe more than the average person. But that excuse doesn't work when somebody watches your film in the theater or is renting the film. Like, they want to see a good movie. They don't care if you had, $5 million or $5. And so it was really kind of taking my time to, like you said, network, make the right connections. And I will say I took maybe longer than I should have. You get comfortable. You move to LA, you grew up in Western Mass, you move to LA, you kind of get comfortable for a little bit.
Did you have a day job at this point? Were you working in the industry or a job outside of the industry to pay your bills and stuff?
Everyone kept saying work in the industry. And every opportunity I got to work in the industry was paying peanuts. And I was like, well, I can't pay rent, and I refused to go back home or refused to leave. I'm like, I'm here, I'm staying. And so I was working sales jobs. I waited tables overnight. I worked anywhere from, a Chili's and a melting pot all the way to like a Denny's overnight in Hawthorne, and you're not making much money there. But I had sales gigs, Best Buy, random places, private boutiques. You do that during the day, and at night is when I hustled. I'm kind of a night owl because I can handle the business stuff during the day, emails, texting people back, doing all this. But at night was where I really kind of got the nitty gritty done, the writing, working through everything, so you kind of burn the candle at both ends. But, I've talked to people who they feel like they can't do that. And my philosophy is, the prerequisite on your dream is not what you may think it is. It is what it is. And you have to do the work. You have to put the time in. You have to to go through every door and maximize every potential. And if you do that and you work that hard, then you will get your dream. But we don't get to dictate, the hours of the dream, and that's something I think that's hard for people to grapple with.
It's so true, and there are so many successful founders out there that I've been studying, and one comes to mind based on what you just said, which is Michael Dell, right, of Dell Computers, massive company, super successful. And when he was asked by a reporter, how many hours did he work to achieve his dream, he wrote all of them. He said all of them, and they're like, "What do you mean?" He said, "I worked all of the hours that I could." And he was still a good father and had a good family, but he made it work. And that's what it takes. I mean, this is a 7-day-a-week job. There's a funny quote by Jeffrey Katzenberg, who I guess would tell people at DreamWorks Animation often. He's like, "Well, if you're not coming in on Saturday, don't bother coming in on Sunday." And it's just, to him, it's 7 days a week. And this is what we do. It's also so competitive. It's such a hard industry to be successful at that everybody thinks it's easy. And that's why people jump in and think, "Oh, movies, I have ideas." I'm sitting at my hairdressers and they go, "Oh, you're a writer. I have so many story ideas." And I'm like, "Really? Okay. Yeah, great. Try putting that into a 120-page script that moves people, that's cohesive." It's a difficult job. It's constant work, and it takes everything you have to succeed. I tell people that it's basically being a filmmaker, being a writer, is just having homework every single day for the rest of your life. So if you're not into that, then don't do it.
And it's not, if you're not passionate about it, for me, so much of it is not work to me. I love doing so much of it, but then there are some parts that are painstaking, and it comes with it. Nothing is bliss and flowers and roses. Like there's always the other side to it.
Yeah, it's not all red carpet premieres, and even those are stressful.
It's true. I mean, right, the way I feel now with these premieres, I just want to get through them. And then I'm like, oh, okay, cool. The film is playing. Great. I've seen it 100 times. Okay. But I'm looking at the audience now, and I'm just happy we got through the red carpet, the photos, everyone got their photos and everything. Like, you're still working, you're still sort of producing. And people think it's like, it's you get to be really chummy and meet people. And I'm like, that's true. And it's great. At the same time, like, there is a responsibility to the film. And I have this responsibility that I take serious. Like, I need to maximize everything for the film, and everybody who's put their hard work in. If I'm the person in charge of XYZ right now, I have to maximize it. The distributor, they're in charge of what they're in charge of. But as filmmakers, you can't let go. And I think some filmmakers feel like, I made the film, I sold it, great, that's it. And it's like, no, like, you have to continue honoring and respecting the film, marketing it, doing whatever it takes for it to get out there and have the exposure and find an audience, but also for, you to make your next film, and to keep going from that.
Yeah, you can't give up just because you signed a deal with a distributor and think that they're going to handle everything. So much of putting butts in seats is still up to you as a filmmaker for self-promotion and social media and making sure that your film is the success that it deserves to be. Right. Yeah, you're totally right. People just make the movie, finish post, finalize it, deliver it, and think that it's over. No, there's still a whole chapter, multiple chapters left of the life of that movie, and to give that up doesn't make any sense to me. So I really appreciate that you said that you think the same way. So then, moving forward, what was sort of the big break at that point? You have these day jobs, but you're still working at night, writing, networking, making it happen somehow. What was the big thing that happened next?
I'll tell you the big break, and it almost sounds like a film itself, because it had all the plot points of something going south and then rising above. I had this labor of love film called Stray Dogs that will be made eventually. We have a lot of great traction on it right now, but it's been in so many different stages. At first, we had this deal with this production company out in North Carolina, and they'd done a bunch of films. They did like faith-based films and thrillers. That was their wheelhouse. We go out there. This is almost a rite of passage for filmmakers. They stole all of the seed money that I needed to bring. I'm learning the process. When I say stole, like, the actual producer has been arrested and sent to jail because he did this to he did it to the one wrong person who took out a website and filed. At the time, it was not a lot of money. And I thought, like, I can't, like, dwell and wallow in this. I have to move on. That was one thing. Had to hit reset. Came back to LA with nothing, dirt broke. Was working, just trying to like recover. And then one of my best friends in Denver, he was like, "Hey, come out to Denver now. I've got this house." We always talked about merging companies. And I had this idea, like, I'm not leaving LA. Like, I can't leave LA. It was like in my mind, it was going to be a failure if I leave. And he's like, "Come back. We'll hit the reset." I came back there. We developed this company, and I met another company that I started working with. And it was tremendous. We started developing these films. I started producing some of their films, and it was tremendous. It was great.
And these were privately funded?
Yeah, so all privately funded. Like we would, we'd raise a $20,000 investor here, a $10,000 investor here. We did a few of these. These were micros, but they were really good. They're out. Like people can see them. And I started developing Stray Dogs again, and we got to a place where we had an EP that came on board that had given us two. He came through two times prior for the work with this production company on other films, and we made the fatal flaw of taking a verbal yes. There's a verbal yes on this money. It was about $500,000, and so we took the little bit of money we had, about $60,000, and went into pre-pro, and started making the film essentially, and hiring people, and went on location and did everything we could. And that money never came. And we lost that. We had name actors that were attached. Like, I was at rock bottom. Many of my team, they took out loans, cards that they just to pay off everything. We were at rock bottom. And I went through this period of 5 or 6 months. Like, this team was some of my best friends. We developed this bond and this relationship, and I was angry, and they were sad and upset. And, I went back out to LA for a few months, staying with my mother. Just was like, I had to get out. And I was just angry at the world, everybody. I came back, and I had this really big conversation. Also, one of my best friends and who was in it with me, making the films and everything. And, we talked about it, and we just had this moment of realizing the universe does not care. It doesn't care. Like, I had this idea that I did every single thing. We did every single thing possible. Put our lives on the line, put all this effort to make the film. And I realized at the end of the day, even if God swooped down and said, "Hey, you know what, MJ, you did everything you could," and shot back up into the sky, guess what? I still don't have the film. The film isn't made still. So that recognition of effort didn't mean anything. And so it was like, you know what? Is this going to defeat me? Is this going to defeat us? No. So we pulled up the bootstraps and went back to work, did everything possible, developed a TV show, developed Plight, and then COVID hit. And so we just laughed. We were like, COVID, nothing is stopping us now. Like, we don't care about COVID. Like, we will navigate and find everything possible. And we did more in 2020 than a lot. We shot a TV series in 2020. We shot Plight. We were in post on another film, and it came about from like the darkest moments. And I know it's very cliche, it's darkest before dawn, but really that's what it was for me. It felt like I didn't know where to go. And then you start piecing it together, and we pieced Plight together, raising funds through like somebody, $2,000 here, $5,000 here. Our biggest investor was myself, and then our next biggest investor was $25,000. Then we had $10,000 and this, but our film, we're barely going to eclipse 6 figures, but we went into production with $63,000 in COVID. And a good chunk of that was COVID money for, taking care of things. And so it didn't matter to us. At some point we said, if we devise the best plan, and I really believe that the father or mother of any successful endeavor is preparation. If you prepare and you do everything possible, you can stretch a dollar. And so it taught me, and I really learned how you make films sometimes is you're doing the thing you hate the most, raising funds. And getting that, our smallest investor was a $400 investor. And I learned all the legalese and basically became entertainment lawyer for this film and actually for another film I'm producing. You had to learn everything. I had to learn the ins and outs. I had to learn how to take people's money and put it toward a film, but that you still have a fiduciary responsibility to honor them and to make sure, we couldn't make this film without a named director or a named cast. for 700,000, we would need cash. So then I was like, okay, we have to keep the budget low so we have a chance to earn that back. And so this whole process came about from going down the wrong path, and then not quitting, not giving up. And so that's why I always encourage everybody that if you want it bad enough, and it's a phrase that my business partner and I, we always say, it's how bad do you want it? People say they want something, and are you willing to put in the work? And so I feel like this is still the beginning of my journey, but it's been like this. But right now, riding the high wave, I'm prepared for the low wave to come, and I know what to do, and I know how to react when it does.
It would be more romantic if they stayed together.
The door would not stay afloat.
It's a movie, not a documentary.
Are you insane, bro? It was a real life tragedy.
Why are you so obsessed with tragedy?
Here's an idea. Why don't the two of you take your hot takes to Pellaplat? They're holding a contest for people like you. Plus, there's cash prizes.
Game on.
So, who won?
She's away.
We both won. Yeah, we found our people.
Perfect. By the way, what about the end of Inception?
Don't even.
No,
I know you're gonna start, but
You need to look at
Pellaplat Writing Challenges, where passionate minds meet. Join today at pellaplat.com.
Oh man, you've touched on so many things that are just so true in my own experience, in the experience of so many indie filmmakers listening to this right now, and indie filmmakers that we've had on this podcast, of the amount of times that people have had to fail to realize that that's actually the best thing to possibly happen to them, that led them to the thing that they really wanted the most. It's happened with, I'm in Canada, and we deal with a lot of, obviously we talk to a lot of Canadian filmmakers that work with or apply to telefilm to try to get soft money. And they sometimes feel like if they don't get that, well, I can't make the movie. It's like, no, that doesn't matter. Go out and find a way to make the movie. Recently, Anthony and I interviewed Zach Lipovsky and Sterling Bancroft. And Zach Lipovsky is one of the directors of Final Destination Bloodlines and the co-director of Freaks and Freaks Underground. Now, Freaks was made for $1 million, but in 2015, Zach and his co-director Adam were feeling the same way. Like they couldn't get anything off the ground. Nothing was going their way. And they said, well, what's a movie that we can make for free? Basically free. You and I will act in it. I'll cam up when you're acting and vice versa. We have a house, we have your family's restaurant, we have your son. Like, how do we put this together? And then they ended up raising a little bit of money here and there, but always said, well, if 10 grand is the most we ever get, we know we can make the movie for 10 grand. And it slowly, went up from there, but they ended up making this movie. And now look, they made the biggest movie in the world this summer for a couple of weeks. And that's what it takes. You need to fail. You need to experience that and realize, wait, this isn't so bad, actually. You thought it was the worst case scenario. You thought it was the worst thing to possibly happen to you. But then you realize, no, I can come back from this. And now that I know it's not so bad, I'm not afraid of this happening again because I know how I can deal with it in the future. And all of that is just such a valuable tool to take with you moving forward. And so I love that COVID hit and you're just like, whatever, screw it. We're going to move forward. We have a way, we have a plan. Everybody's on board. And you were more successful in the COVID years than in the years leading up to it. I think that's super inspirational.
Thank you. Yeah. I think there's this disassociation that a lot of people have with the people who have made it, that they didn't go through anything or they had a silver spoon. Now, obviously, there nepotism that sure there are some people who
it happens 100%, but not for a majority of people.
And I've encouraged people to look at their idols or the people that they think have, or either have been or are the most successful, and look at their stories. Look at how many of them have lived in their cars. I lived in my car for 6 months. I barely told anybody, and I'm not the only one. A lot of people did that. There are people who failed and lost a lot of money, lost seed money, were in major debt. Major companies that we consider successful operate in the red forever and have venture capitalists, endless funding that until they're able to get. So we can't disassociate and feel like, that's them. No, that could be us too. We can be successful, and being successful is different to many people. So defining your own version of success and also saying, hey, if you want, to make it in in this realm, if you want to keep making films, if you want to reach the upper echelon of celebrity success, let's say, like, then there is a roadmap to that as well, or you can create your own roadmap. And so I've always believed that. I feel like in those moments when you hit rock bottom and you're down, like, you have to regulate yourself and kind of go back to realizing, you know what, I'm fortunate enough to wake up the next day. I'm fortunate enough to at least be somewhere where I can make films, have my health. And there's so many things we're not grateful for. And I believe it's important to look at what you have and be grateful for it and understand nothing's promised to you and you have to put the work in.
100%. Well, you've put the work in and you wrote and shot Plight. And so you like you mentioned, you shot this during COVID. What was the budget? $60,000?
So we had $63,000 going into production. 3 weeks. We were scheduled 17 days. We actually wrapped in 16 days. As a filmmaker, there's so many things you can fear. You can worry about this not working. The only thing I feared, Impavit Entertainment is my company, and people don't know what Impavit is, you can look it up, but it's the undaunted, the fearless. And the reason for that is you have to be fearless in what you go after. And the entertainment, the films we bring, that's what I believe. But what I did fear was a positive COVID test. Every time I woke up and I just felt like I'm going to have a text message or I'm going to see that somebody tested positive. Every day that nobody tested positive, and thankfully nobody tested positive, I felt like we're shooting we're making our days. We didn't go over, I think, I don't know, my AD's voices in my head. I think maybe we went over like half an hour, 2 days or something like that. We never had any of those 18-hour days. We really tried to make sure we were protecting, cast and crew, respecting the time. And, it was a brilliant experience. This little town, it felt like we had a backlot, because the furthest location was a 2-minute drive.
Wow. Okay. So again, you wrote it to your resources, or you found a way to be super resourceful in terms of locations. I'm assuming quite a small crew, pretty like skeleton crew on this.
Yeah, fairly small. I wrote it, I directed, I produced. A lot of my producing, getting to set, like I had to lean on my my other producer, Heather Webb. She was incredible. We had another producer, Jeff, who had a COVID scare, so he actually couldn't come to set for a little bit. He couldn't come to location for a few days. And so she was handling so much. She was also delivering meals. We had cinematographer Vidigo von Schulzendorf. He's a legendary German cinematographer. He shot Bayou Caviar. I met him down in New Orleans on Bayou Caviar. We just had so many great conversations about film and like the immersive experience of like creating a vision. And, at the time when COVID hit, I felt like, he's 76. He's the healthiest 76-year-old I knew, but I felt like, I don't know, he's elderly. I don't want to compromise him. And then our executive producer, Steve, he called me. He's like, oh, Vidigo's got, he's got COVID. He can't taste any wine or can't smell anything, but he's good. And I knew that call, I think, was in May. And I knew if we're looking to shoot in the fall now, I was like, okay, maybe there's enough time. Maybe he can. And so his paychecks are more than... he read the script and he's like, look, I'm in. And we had a great time creating. But him being in, we had one gaffer, a key grip who was like Superman. Like he was like 3 people in one. We've worked with him so many times. Our gaffer was an electrician. And so he did a great job too. But there's all this, we had first AC, a second AC. Our crew, yes, it was a skeleton. I'm going through the whole crew, but it's...
No, but this is valuable because people don't understand how small of a crew you actually can use to get by and make your film. Some people just think that, no, I need all of these extra bodies on set. And sometimes that actually just slows you down and of course costs you more money and more mouths to feed. It's really good to consider, well, what's the bare minimum amount of people that I can have on my team? Do I need 5 grips? Probably not.
So outside of our key grip, we had one grip who moonlighted as our boom op. We have a tremendous Jeff Bear, we call him Bear, who's like our go-to sound guy. He can usually do both, like boom opping and recording the sound and mixing. Sometimes we needed boom to get in there and he needed to really listen and focus on the mix. And our grip would go in there, who also is an extra in the film. And everybody on the film wore multiple hats. Nobody was just, there to do one job, really. I mean, maybe the actors, but even the actors, like everything it was different with like how we were going to shoot with COVID and how we had to maximize time. And, our makeup artist, that was a whole production, is like timing makeup right, because it was just her. And also like you can't reuse the same makeup with COVID. Like there are all these things that, between her and our producer and our ADs, they were fabulous. Like Alex and Evan, they did a great job of like working with me. And like we were in the foxhole together, figuring it out. Like, okay, well, Allison with makeup, she needs this time. So, you develop, it's nostalgic for me because I go back and I think about it, but you develop these fond memories because, it's hyperbole to compare it to war, but for production war, that's what it is. You're going to battle to make a film, and everything is conspiring against you, and you say, I don't care, we're going to find a way. And you only do that with dedicated, passionate cast and crew. It resonates on screen. When you can tell there's a heart behind the film, you see it on screen, and you can tell when you watch movies and you're like, yeah, they mailed it in. It was a clock in, clock out transactional endeavor. And
it felt lifeless in a way. Yeah, the heart wasn't there. I totally agree. I love this and how it came together. Now, post-production, how long did that take?
Post actually took a lot longer than anticipated. Justin Lewis is my editor. He's probably going to be my editor on it. He doesn't know he signed a life contract with me. He's going to edit everything.
Justin, if you're listening, you're the guy now.
He knows. He's an Emmy-winning editor. He's tremendous. Like we assembled an all-star team, and he's a writer-director in his own right as well. I mean, we went through. We probably had 3 or 4 months until we had a cut that we liked, but we went back out to Kansas for a day and a half to get some pickups, some small scenes. We started with our composer, Terrell Lamont. I'm at Terrell's place right now. This is his studio. He's also one of my best friends. And we worked through the music, and that process was amazing. I'd always done temp music before, and he had one ask of me. He said, can you just direct me? Give me a word or two or a few things. We'll just talk feel, but let me come up with something. And it was some of the best times I had working with Justin and Terrell through post. And sound was a little bit of an issue we had at first. We had somebody doing sound and trying to hit, like every filmmaker does this. They all make this mistake. And I made this mistake of trying to hit a deadline. We're all trying to hit that Sundance South by deadline, and you rush it. And we kind of rushed through sound. And so afterwards, I actually reconnected with an old friend of mine who is a Grammy-nominated sound engineer. He's done so much. And we worked on one of those films when I was 16. And he did like some music and some sound work. I mean, he has his 2 studios. He works out of one, he works at another. And so, I had barely any money left in the film. So I was trying to finance the rest. And it was, hey, can I Venmo you $100 this week, $150 this week? And so it was kind of a snail's pace. Everybody was grossly underpaid. But from a standpoint of like, I wanted to make sure, we have to respect their time. You can't turn down if you got a session that's coming in for $250 an hour. My $250 a month is not going to take precedent.
Yeah, we have to understand that that's just how it works. Everybody's trying to make a living and put food on the table. So, but if you can kick somebody an honorarium like that, even just as a thank you for their time.
Yeah, and then we were able to raise, toward the end of it, we were able to raise a few extra grand. And then I was like, hey, here, take this. And, he was able to block off some time. So our post was... It was about a year. It depends, because we had a break where nothing was happening until he started. So it was about a year and a half, I would say. And then we did a festival run.
So this was like 2022, mid 2022. You finished the film then?
We shot November 2020, went through the edit, did the pickups in June 2021. Kind of got that like music and everything working through that first wave of sound toward the end of 2021. Didn't do anything with it for a while. We're kind of waiting until Angelo is his name. Angelo with Trackhouse. Trackhouse recorded incredible. He kind of started in 2022 and really amped it up in the summer 2022. And then we were ready to start submitting to festivals toward the end of 2022. We had our world premiere at Julian Dubuque International in 2023. which was an incredible experience. If any filmmakers out there, like, head to that festival, they're terrific. Susan, who runs the festival, and her whole team, like, they welcome you in. You're like royalty as a filmmaker there. And I didn't want to do like a 2-year run, but we were near a year, and then we got recruited. A couple other festivals were like, hey, we love the film. We got to see it. Or directors who, Moonlight at another festival talked about it. And so we ended up with a 1.5-year festival run, and then looked to sell the film after that.
Yeah. And did your deal with Indie Rights come out of a specific festival, or did you just end the festival run and then start approaching distributors?
So we had a few offers during the festival run. Every filmmaker feels like, I want that MG. You want the MG, and the MGs are gone with name actors unless you're at a certain level. If Kevin Bacon's in the film, sure, you can get an MG, but like it's hard to get. And our actors are phenomenal, but they're not household names. And I'm not a household name director, so there's nothing for the distributor to look at and say, they could like the movie, and the laurels help a little bit, but at the end of the day, terrible film with an A-list or a very successful name, they know will make more money, or they can sell it for more.
And when you say no MG, I mean literally no MG, just a deal, like a contract for distribution, or are the MGs so small that like 10 grand, 20 grand?
So there was a 15 grand MG, but that every other term like raked us over the coals. And then there was a 20 grand buyout. Like, we see nothing. It's 20 grand. I'm like, that sounds cool to have an MG, but like, I can't do that to, I say my investor, I'm the biggest investor, so it's me too. But in my mind, I'm thinking, like, how do we honor the film? How do we honor the investors? How do we, but the deal with Indie Rights, what I did was I wanted to do my due diligence and hit up every distributor that, we either had some connection to. And we had a lot of people who wanted the film. It was all like, what were they going to come with? And, with Indie Rights, they were straight shooters. Linda and Michael, they've supported the film. They were very honest about what they felt like the film could do, what they felt like the market is, and what other distributors may say. And I'd done my research from forums and talking to other fellow filmmakers. And I know a filmmaker, he's got a film with names and it's north of $1 million, and he didn't get an MG, and his distributor kind of told him this and this and that. And so it's interesting. When I reached out to Indie Rights, it was toward the beginning of the search, and I wanted to keep searching. And then they came back and fairly soon, and they were like, yeah, we really like the film. We'd like to take it on, this and that. I felt very comfortable going with them. At this point, as a filmmaker, you do the best research you can. You take a shot, and they were amenable to also working with me on the vision I had. And that's the thing. Like, a lot of distributors will have sample agreements. They want you to take this and this and that. And even they did. They had, these are kind of our go-tos. This is what we do. But talking with them, and I think that's the other thing I'll say to every filmmaker out there, speak up. Like, you're not going to offend. As long as you are respectful and kind, speak up for what you feel like best serves the film. And they've been great working with me on it. And it's been a very collaborative effort so far.
Yeah, it's so true. And another way to look at this is like when you're putting together a crew for production, you are hiring people that you want to work with and spend time with 12 hours, 15 hours a day. You also have to look at a distributor or other people that board your film after it's been shot as partners and people that you are working with. So you're not working for the distributor, you're working with the distributor. And so you want to find people that you get along with and can build a relationship with. And so I think you handled it perfectly. If you felt good about it, then that's great. And you like their plan for the movie, perfect. You're set. And now look at this. Your movie you're screening all over the country. You're traveling with the film right now. That's super exciting. How has it been seeing your movie in various different cities with different audiences, and what's the reception been like?
It's been tremendous. I think you dream that it's going to be, an amazing experience and everyone will respond well, but that's what it's been so far. Like, the audiences are engaged. The questions, we've done the Q&As afterwards, have been very intuitive and very, locked into, either certain things that happened in the film, or like looking at us up there in the Q&A and how we came about and what we did to approach every potential pitfall in production. The crowds have been great. Our 1 week run during the week, the crowds were a little bit smaller, but the weekend turnout in the beginning was phenomenal, and then the last day we were there was phenomenal. And then we just did St. Francis, Kansas, and we had a packed house. And you do your, like, for me, we've got our street marketing, we've got some PR, we do this and that, but even with that, you're also cognizant of, like, we don't want to spend so much money that we have to recoup now, so you have to be careful about it. And I felt like the most efficient value is me getting out there and our cast and crew getting out there and street marketing and going to events and talking to people. And so you never know who's going to show up. And then with St. Francis, having to be a packed house, and the Q&A was like 33 minutes. It was one of our longest we've had. And then we've gotten some feedback that there's going to be a lot of people in Boulder for the film opening this weekend. And we've got 10 cities. We're excited. We're looking forward to it. We're also on Amazon Prime as well. And so that's the thing about releases these days. I'm used to, like, you grow up as a kid in the 90s. It was like, well, there's the theater. If you can't catch it in the theater, you got to wait months for that DVD. And
yeah, you're waiting 6 months for that DVD or VHS. And
yeah. And so we opened in theaters, and it opened on Amazon Prime Video. So, people can rent it on Prime Video and buy it on Prime Video. And we have a DVD and Blu-ray that's going to come out next month as well with special features, because I wanted that physical media. I refuse to, streaming is great, but like the tangible thing you can hold. And we have a soundtrack that's coming out as well, the beautiful score that Terrell composed, and an original song that just debuted. So we're kind of, as an indie filmmaker, you can be an indie filmmaker, but the way I look at it is, I'm a filmmaker. We are filmmakers. Let's not cut any corners. Let's have the full soundtrack. Let's have the physical media. Let's have the original song. Let's do it all. Why not? At least that's my approach. But I feel like it can be anybody's.
You're so right about all of that. And so if you miss that, anybody listening, you can watch the movie right now on Amazon Prime. It's called Plight. Definitely check it out. I know I'm going to check it out. I'm super stoked. And MJ, if you ever get a chance to bring the movie to Vancouver, let us know, because there's a great theater here, the Rio, that screens indie films and is a big supporter of indie film. And so if you ever want to bring it to Vancouver,
absolutely. I mean, we've got a 10-city theatrical release, but nobody said it has to be only 10. So it's funny. We're talking with another theater right now that heard about the film and wants to bring it in through the network of these cinemas. So. Hey, that sounds great. We may come your way.
This has been so fun. As we are nearing the end here, we always ask our guests if you have one piece of advice that you can share with an up-and-coming filmmaker, director, writer, whomever, what advice could you give them today to follow their dreams?
This is not for the weary. I think if you love film and you want to make films, start doing that. And no matter whatever perceived roadblock or setback you have, just understand that is part of the path to your glory. It will happen. Belief is one major thing, and people overuse, I think, the word manifest. I love it, but you need follow through. You can manifest all you want, but you have to follow through. Put the work in, and just know that when you're in, don't get down in the doldrums. When you have that terrible setback or that terrible moment, just know that, envision that you will be successful. You will be there on the red carpet. You will have your film out to the masses. And this moment that you're feeling down right now of whatever perceived setback happened, that failure or that setback, it's part of the paved road to your success. And I believe that, and I've experienced it. So keep going, keep pushing. That's the biggest thing I'll say.
Well, on that note, MJ, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you so much, too. If I could just add that if anyone wants to follow us and our story, you can go to plightfilm.com, at plightfilm on Instagram, and at MJ_Alhabeeb_ Jr. and at Impact Entertainment. If you want to follow along on the theatrical, the Prime Video, the music video, DVD, Blu-ray, all that. And then getting tickets on plightfilm.com as well, and follow our journey. And thank you, Ken. And thank you for having us on. we're big fans, and I feel like this podcast is going to be it's going to be huge. And I love the direction that you're going, and it's been an honor and a pleasure to talk shop and talk film with you. Really appreciate you having us on.
Thank you so much. That means the world. And we will put all of that information in the show notes for where people can find you.